Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning.
A podcast where we share with you great insights about everything family from over 30 years of parenting 7 kids and over a decade of equipping parents through our Crazy Cool Family ministry.
So let us inspire and equip you to build your best family.
James McLamb is with us, and he's a dear friend. I've known James for 2-3 years now. We got introduced by a common friend.
It may be longer than that. Now that I think about it, we may be approaching about 5 years.
Wow. Yeah, so a good friend of ours introduced us. James is in the southeast region of our country, and why don't you introduce yourself a little bit, James?
I'm James McLamb. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called Generation Youth, and our primary mission is to equip parents, teachers, coaches, really anyone who has a desire to see young people survive and thrive. We want to give them the resources, the tools, and the equipment they need to do that by providing them with up-to-date content that is relative to where they're at in their journey, and also how they can effectively model and guide and coach their child through the turbulent times of the teenage years. So that's our purpose. That's our goal. We do that through a variety of different ways, whether it's books, podcasts, virtual summits, speaking, online resources, whatever you need, we'll try to find it. If we don't have it, we'll direct you to someone else.
Well, and so from our standpoint at Crazy Cool Family, James is a really mighty man of God. I want to tell you a little bit more about him in that he's a businessman. He's a father of 3. Your kids' ages are...
Well, by the time this is recording, there'll be 26, 23, and 16.
Yeah, and 2 girls and a boy. What are the boys? 2 girls and a boy, right?
Yep, 2 girls and a boy. The girls are the bookends, the 26 and the 16-year-old, and the son is 23.
Yeah, and we were talking before the podcast, he's getting to be a better parent as he goes along. And yeah, and so there's a number of reasons. This month, as you know, if you're following Crazy Cool Family, we are challenging dads. We did May, we talked about the moms, and we honored Mother's Day, and we challenged the moms. And in June, we're really challenging dads. And James is just one of those guys that he's a businessman. The ministry is not his full-time job. He works in the real estate field and does a lot of work, does a lot of deal making, things like that. And then he's got this ministry that he's done. How many years have you done, Generation Youth?
Generation Youth started in 2012.
Yeah. So
originally it was called Generation Ziegler because we were partnering with the Zig Ziglar Corporation. That's how our mutual friend David Wright and I got connected. And over time, it's evolved to what it is today.
Yeah, and so James just has a wealth of experience, and with Generation Youth, not only being a dad, but also with Generation Youth, he talks to a lot of dads, a lot of parents come in through his summits, and they've written books. We'll talk about that at the end. But so let's just dig in a little bit, and I'm curious, like now as you talk to parents that are trying to disciple their young people, what are the challenges that you feel like that we're in June, so let's talk particularly about dads are facing as they want to disciple their kids.
Don, one of the things that I really think is a stumbling block for parents today, specifically dads, is they look at the way that the world has changed so much. They look at the new technologies, the online things that are happening, AI, social media, virtually, all these things, and they think that I have no idea. I cannot identify at all with what my child's going through. They're in a different world than I am. And there is some elements to that, but if we could help them understand that the core issues that their teen is facing, that their young person is facing, is the same core issues that everybody has dealt with, not only in recent history, but we can go as far back as we need to. We can even go to the Old Testament scripture and see these core issues. If we can help them understand that a young person really is facing the questions of understanding who they are, what their identity is, their self-image, biggest problem. Second biggest problem, relationships. How do I form effective relationships with one another? And the third problem, figuring out how do I find why I'm here and how do I set goals to achieve that. Those 3 areas we can help a parent, a dad, understand that that's what they're facing, and they need to focus on that. Then all this other stuff, the social media, the AI, all the fast-moving world that we live in will fade away, and they'll be able to concentrate on those
Well, and I
strengths.
kind of want to stop down a little bit. So, you said something I think is really important there is that the number one thing a dad can impart to their son or daughter is the first thing you said was identity.
Yes.
So, a lot of people instructing, even Christian people that are instructing parents in how to do discipleship would say, our kids need to know their Bible. Our kids they need to limit their phones. They need to, they focus on some of these things. But you just said the number one thing that a dad can impart to his son in whatever world they're in, whether it's technology world or a world of 30 years ago, is identity. What do you mean by that?
Well, they need to understand who they are, who and whose they are. Understand their identity through the lens of who Christ has created and who God created them to be. They need to have a great sense of understanding what it means to be a Manning, what it understands to be a McLamb, and understand what it means to be a child of God. When they get that foundation of understanding their identity is based on that, then they can start building more of who they're going to be and who they're going to become. Because if not, then what are they building their identity on? They're building it on whatever they see on television or social media or other apps or what their friends may say.
How did you learn that was important?
Well, at Generation Youth, we interviewed 2,500 young people from across the United States, and we asked them just to talk to us and tell us what they thought the biggest problems facing their generation was. Now, we started this in 2015, and we were pretty consistent about doing it yearly until 2020, and then there was this thing that happened across the nation that some people may remember, and it kind of slowed us down. But 2,500, a little over 2,500, we asked them the questions, and then we found buckets that the most of the answers could fall in. Some of the answers didn't fall into any category. They were kind of situation specific, but most of them fell into the answer. Most of them said, now some of them said things that would go in all three buckets, but most of them said something, about 85% said something that would fall into the self-image category. Understanding who they are, understanding how to overcome adversity, understanding how to overcome failure, all those types of things that relate to having a good, positive self-identity going forward.
Wow. And so, this isn't just something James dreamed up. This is, you really did. And that's amazing that you guys did that. And then,
let me point this out. We're not the only ones who found this. The Fuller Youth Institute out of California, they did a survey of church youth. I don't know when theirs went. I think it was 18 when they were doing it. I'm not 100% sure. And they discovered, now listen to this, we were not connecting with them. We didn't know anything about what was going on. They discovered that youth want the answer to three questions. And here are the three questions. Who am I? Where do I belong? And why am I here? That was the three questions that they came up with. We came up with three areas they suffer with: self-image, relationship, and goals. They're the same things. They're the same. Two different groups, opposite coast. We're in the Southeast. They're in the California. Asking different audiences. They were specifically church. We were asking school leadership, high school and college student leadership students. Same issues.
Yeah, and Crazy Cool Family will say the same thing, that the number one thing that we do is connect with our kids. And so you said there's identity, connection, and then kind of why am I here? Identity, relationship, purpose, if you want to go that route.
Yes.
So identity, relationship, and really relationship with parents also leads to relationship with God. And identity and I want to dig into this for a minute, because I think these three things are so valuable in that, when a dad imparts identity to his son or daughter, then I believe that when it comes time for that son or daughter to need their identity from God, it flows easier because the dad has already done it. The dad, who is the first image of God for the child, then imparts that identity, and then it kind of greases the skids for them to see the real identity of Christ. So my question to you is, like, how do you tell? So a dad who's never seen this, never heard this, didn't interview 2,500 young people, didn't do any of this, and has never heard the word identity in his life, or maybe he does and he's just got this vague notion of it. Okay, so how does that dad first maybe even gain identity for themselves and then impart it to their children?
Well, they have to be intentional in seeking this. Now, it cannot just be a one-time thing with their child. When my son was 4 years old, he joined his first t-ball team. And one of the coaches came up to him and introduced himself. And my son said, "Hi, I'm Jacob McLamb of the McLamb family." He knew who he was. Now, as a dad, was not pouring back into that identity. So when he hit those middle school years, going into like the freshman year, and all these different forces were hitting him, his peers, just culture in general, he began to lose a little bit of sight. It was getting messy in him. So as a dad, I needed to reinforce that. Look, you are my son. We're together because our Heavenly Father created us to be together. And so I had to keep reminding him of that and showing him what his identity meant to be a part of the McLamb family and what his identity meant to be part of God's family. So much so that when he graduated high school, maybe a year after he graduated high school, we took a picture of me, my dad, and him, and put it in a frame with a little saying that was next to it, what it meant to be a man in this house. Give to him to help him understand, you are McLamb, this is what it means, this is what this name means, and this is what this legacy means that my father, who's a man of God, has passed on to me, that I in turn want to pass on to you, to see you pass on to your children.
So you didn't like just have one weekend identity class and they graduated from it and everything.
Yeah. And Don, I'll freely admit, it wasn't like that. We did these things and all of a sudden he was walking around knowing everything. He still struggled, even though we were intentional. We were still fighting. They still had this battle. I mean, the enemy was fighting me, trying to get his identity formed in Christ. So we still had times where we had to step back and reassess things and talk again and help him understand what was going on. And I think it'll continue to be a process, even as adults. You and I, at our age, we, even having walked with Christ for these years, there are days that I don't feel like I'm a child of God. I don't feel like I measure up to that. And so if we feel like that, we know our children will feel like that. We have to be intentional to remind them of this gracious gift that we've been given.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think is super important for dads to hear is that identity we can't give what we don't have. Mm-hmm. And so as a dad, if you're thinking, man, I don't get this, well, maybe that's a good place to start, is to explore your identity in Christ and explore that. It was a revelation to me. That's why I was asking kind of where you came to it. Because for me, it was like, there was a time that, I heard it on a cassette tape. That'll show you how old I am. That it was like, and a guy was telling me that God loves me right where I am. And I'm like, no. I mean, I really, it was just so hard for me to receive that because I felt like that I had to perform. Mm-hmm. I had to do what was right. I had to be something in order to receive God's love. And that's just not true. That's not biblical. And the same way with our kids, they're not. So often I think that what kids believe, and I'd be interested to see what your research said, that they have to perform in order to receive their parents' love.
Yeah.
Is that right?
There's a lot of them that feel that way. There's a lot of them that feels like they do not measure up to the identity that their parents want them to have. So sometimes the identity that a dad or a mom are trying to bestow is not founded in biblical principles or not founded in a loving manner. It is more of a performance manner. I want, my son's named Jacob. I want Jacob to measure up, this athletically. And if he doesn't, then you're no son of mine. Or I want you to, reach this level and in school. If you don't, you're no son of mine. They need to know you love them no matter what, and that you're proud of who they can become.
But then, James, okay, so how does that, and that parent then says, okay, so all I do, I don't get to ever have them achieve, because if I have them achieve, then I'm going to be this loser dad that's not imparting identity. So, but yet we are, God calls us to things. And so how does that dad balance the idea of accepting a child where he is while inspiring them to be all that they can be and all God calls them to be?
Well, let's look then to the third problem that they face, and that is the lack of purpose and goals in their life. If we can help them find a purpose for where they are in this season of their life, and please understand, dads, if you have a 16-year-old, you're not going to find his life purpose for the next 50 years of his life then. But you can for this season, maybe this year, maybe for where he is in high school, maybe for this short period of time. And by giving that, it gives them something to aspire to want to be better. It's not that they are trying to accomplish these goals or achieve these certain accolades because you want them to, but because they feel it's a part of what they're meant to be or what they're meant to be. So helping them find that purpose can inspire them to want to achieve to be better. There's a book called The Path of Purpose by a Stanford professor that says that purpose is one of the key things that is missing in young people's life.
100%.
Yeah, and it's not. I don't want folks to think, I got to give them their life purpose. And sometimes as Christians, we oversimplify it to, their purpose is to glorify God. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Yes, our purpose as believers is to glorify the Father. But what about right now? What are they supposed to do in the context of that? What is a tangible thing? Because glorifying God that can become almost a slogan, a statement.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean anything. So what does that mean in relation to that? So what does a man of God, a young man of God, a member of the McLamb family, who is a child of God, what are they going to do for this season in their life? And I want to tell dads, and I'm going to caution them right now, you may not get a very enthusiastic response and a very enthusiastic They may fight it. They may roll their eyes at you. They may just look at you like you're crazy. Or you could have the opposite, where this is the answer they were looking for, is someone to ask them this.
Well, that's where, okay, I'm going to see if I can, you said identity, relationship, purpose, identity, connection, purpose. Let me see if I can summarize you a little bit and see if you agree with this. It's like, because I think a lot of times as dads, we struggle with, man, I'm just trying to help my kids. I'm just trying to help. I say dads with great intentions do harmful things sometimes with the best intentions there, because most times I see dads aren't trying to hurt their kids. I mean, they're not trying to make them feel like they're not enough, or they're not trying, but they're like, I'm just trying to help the kid learn how to make his bed. How hard is this? I mean, those type of things. I just want him to be a hard worker. I just want him to, I see how good he can be, and all he wants to do is sit on the couch and, eat ice cream, whatever. But let me see if I can bring it into focus for us a little bit. For what you're saying is, you can tell your kid, what if you did this? What if you told your kid, look, you're amazing. God has made you as an amazing human. You're a mighty child of God. You are created. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Now, I would like to dream with you about how God's going to use you in your life, and I'd like to help you get there. Wow, wouldn't that be a great, I'm kind of just paraphrasing what you said, is if we said to it, rather than, you know what, you're not enough, and if you don't do this, you're not going to be successful in life, and you're lazy, and if you don't want to be lazy, I want dads to kind of see what I'm hearing is that's kind of the difference is we start with, you are fearfully and wonderfully made, right where, and you have gifts and talents that God has given you. And as a dad, I don't want to tell you what to do. I want to join you in dreaming about your life.
Yeah.
And the dream may be a big dream. Maybe you want to be a doctor someday, or maybe you want to be but maybe the dream is just, let's make the football team. The dream is, maybe we can dream together and say, let's make an A in this class. I know you may not want to do that, son, but I'd like you to, I'd like to help you with that dream. And sometimes there's going to be consequences to that, because I'm your dad and because I believe in you and because of this. If you make a D in that class, we're going to have some consequences, and that's okay too. Because am I getting on the right track?
You are getting on the right track. And I think one of the reasons why dads are so much that negative one, hey, you're not measuring up, you're not doing this, is because we have so limited amount of time that we are intentionally spending with them. So that when we do spend that time with them, we feel like we need to be in a correction mode, that we need to correct this child immediately instead of coaching them through life, instead of guiding them. A parent sometimes needs to be a lot more of a coach in the sense of a coach, of a life coach, than they need to be a corrector, a disciplinarian. And
especially when you say when they're teenagers.
Yes,
because that's where you're dealing. As they're moving in those teenage years, as you're talking to parents and their interactions, what is effective? What is if a parent asks you, James, or if a dad asks you, tell me how to be effective as a dad with my teen, what would you tell him?
Well, what did God tell the people of Israel to do when he was teaching them the laws? He didn't say sit them down for a one-time session and give them the laws and stuff. He said talk about it when you're walking around, when you're eating, when you're together, when you're hanging out together, when you're spending time. So there's a couple of things there that's implied that we need to acknowledge. Number one, are you spending casual, relatable time with your child so that you can have these conversations? I grew up on a farm. The amount of time that I spent with my dad growing up was enormous because I was his free laborer in the house. Okay, there's somebody who's capable, he's strong, he's able to do stuff, and I don't have to pay him. If he says anything, I'm like, you're getting food and board. That's your payment in this house.
Right.
So, but I was spending all this time with him. Now, did I enjoy it all? No. But there were times he was dripping truths on me without a lecture time. And that can only happen if they're hanging out with you. Take them to the store when you got to go somewhere. Do yard work with them. Everything doesn't have to be a life lesson, but every life event can be a lesson.
Yeah, it's almost like in the quantity comes the quality.
Yes. That's really good.
So I do think in our hectic society that it could even be now car rides to practice.
Yeah.
Or like I did a lot, and I think finding things. I like the idea of finding things my kids are interested in. Like I coached a lot of their sports teams, or or maybe my boys got involved in a video game, and not like the ones where not an Xbox or whatever, but one on your phone. And it was one of those that you play a lot. And I was like, hey, teach me how to play that. Oh, Dad, you'll never learn how to do it or whatever. And I just started pretending. And then I would ask them questions. Man, this character, I don't understand it, but what do you do? And that's a weird, that's just it's a
random example. That's the way to meet them where they're at right now. By the time this airs and stuff, I hope this has happened, but I'm planning. My daughter's married, my 26-year-old's married, and so I have a new son. I have a son-in-law who's now part of the family. So I'm taking him and my son, a 26-year-old and a 23-year-old young men, and we're going to go on a weekend fishing trip. We're going to go trout fishing up in the mountains of North Carolina. That's not because all of us love fishing that greatly. It's because I want to spend time with them, to listen to them, to talk to them, and let's have an environment that's low-key, that's relaxed, that's in the evening, when we can talk about what does it mean to be men? What does it mean to be, a husband to my daughter? What does it mean to be looking for, in my son's case, looking for someone that can be your spouse? I'm trying to find those, be intentional to find those times. You got to do it. You got to do it. Sometimes it's just taking them to work. Sometimes it's taking them to the store. It's playing games with them. And Don, when you said that, I have said on the I'm set up in our playroom next to our son, watching him play a game and not understanding what he's doing, but going, just being quiet and listening. And then when he does something good, say, "Well, that was good. What did you do?" And then letting him
Yeah.
explain it.
Yeah.
Not being that old person saying, "I don't understand it. Tell me, this looks weird to me." That kind of, like my parents would have done.
Yeah.
It's more of, "That was really good. What you just did. What was that?"
Yeah, I think, a couple of words that come to me as you're talking about is inclusion, of including including them in what we're doing, and then also the words just being interested. If we are interested in what they are doing and and maybe finding common interest, then we create that. I mean, we don't have a farm today. Life is faster. We have to recognize that. But it doesn't mean. I love what you said at the first. Is I think that we blame technology, but the problems are still the same. We just have to find ways to do some of this. Our lives are different. We're not growing up on the farm anymore, but it doesn't mean there's not ways to connect and do things.
Mr. Ziegler said that children spell love Time. That's how they spell love. Time. Time. So being intentional with your time. And I know, guys, men, listen, Don and I know, we know it's tough. You get home, you're tired, you had a rough week, people have been struggling, but you need to be intentional with them. You only got one shot.
One of the things we did with our teenagers, and as you guys know at CCF, we have 7 kids, and so we've had many, many years of teenagers coming through our house. In fact, my last one just turned 20, and so we figured out that we've had teenagers for 23 years straight. And so before, my last one, McKay just turned 20, and one of the things we did was our kids would usually come home about midnight or whatever, and we didn't really tell them to do this, but we just encouraged them because we would stay up. And so, and again, we want to go to bed, but and usually they didn't get up. It was 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. If they were ever out that late, we were usually in bed. But if it was 11, 12 o'clock, we would, and then when they came in, we would call to them. And we would just say, "Hey," because maybe they were going upstairs or whatever. And we might have, and it just became a way of life that they knew when they came home, they stopped and talked with mom and dad. Mm-hmm. Now, we didn't tell them that. We didn't have a rule that said, "Hey, you have to come in and check in with me," or, things like that. But it just became, we would, sometimes the conversation would be 2 minutes. And, "Man, I'm tired. I'm going to bed." Great. Okay. And a lot of times it was that. Sometimes it turned into a lot different conversations, and we would, and so, and I'm not saying that's not a rule for you parents that you have to do. Okay, Don said we have to have our kids come in. Maybe there's some people go to bed at 9 o'clock. We were more late people, and we used that to our advantage, but it was still a sacrifice. But my point is that what are you doing to find those things? What are the rhythms for your family that are going to help you connect with your kids? It's a way of life, just like identity. You said we do it along the way. We do it when we rise up, when we lie down, or whatever. What I'm hearing from you, James, it's about that intentionality over time to connect with them, and then to connect in a way that imparts the identity.
Well, I think we're told this a lot by people who work with families, the importance of family meals together. That was something that was non-negotiable in our house, unless there was something that providentially hindered someone from being here. Just kept them out of the house. You were going to be at a meal. We didn't have, we had set down meals, nothing, maybe a little music playing in the background, but nothing interfering. And we had time to talk, and we had to figure out how to ask the right questions to order to get the things, non-threatening questions from a teen perspective, and that's an art that you have to learn how to do that. Nighttime, up until that point in time where their nights got a little bit on a different schedule, because we know it's very easy when they're children, when they're in that elementary school and they have that set bedtime, to go in, to pray with them, to tell them a story, to wind down the day, put them in bed, and off you go. We know as teenagers, once they get middle school, high school, they may be working on homework at long hours. They may be doing a lot of different things. So their schedule's a little bit different. but it is doing what you said, making sure every single night before we part for the evening.
Right.
And when I say part, I'm talking about they're in their room, I'm in my room. Before we part for the evening, that there's that time of saying, I love you. Is there anything I can pray for you about? What are we doing
Yeah.
in life going forward?
Well, what I want to point out there is just a little subtle difference, but I mean, we didn't do meals together a lot as a family. I mean, we had so many kids going so many different directions, and it was so hard to get it. But I mean, and that's what I really want parents to see is that there's not the rules. It's everybody's got different personalities. A lot of times people say, tell us how to be like the Mannings. And we're like, you're never going to be like the Mannings, not from a quality standpoint, but everybody's got different rhythms. Everybody's got different personalities. And so find what works for you and do it over time and establish the rhythms and for your family, and you'll see blessings that, because your kids are dying for it. I mean, they want to be connected with. And don't you
they want to have those traditions in your house, those rituals in your house. I mean, I'm a big advocate, Don, of making holiday traditions. I mean, once it gets about the second, third week in November, my family knows what to expect from there until the end of the year. What we're going to do weekly, when we're going to have Advent, what we're going to do during Thanksgiving, what we're going to do from Christmas Eve morning, the morning of Christmas Eve, until Christmas Day in the afternoon. They know what's going to happen in the McLamb house. And you would think, as they got older, they would be like, oh, that's not fun, I don't want to do that. But they come back to it. Now they're saying, we are going to do this. So much so, if we change like a dessert that we're going to have it, if we change the dessert, my youngest had her birthday just a few weeks ago, and she didn't want the traditional ice cream cake that Oreo ice cream cake that we'll have that we've done for years. The other two came 20, and they're in their 20s, mid-20s. They came in, the first thing they said, where's the ice cream cake? Well, I didn't want that. I went, you can't have another cake. We got to have ice cream. They were upset. So those rituals, those traditions, they thrive on those. And those types of things help build their identity as well.
Wow. Well, this has been great, James. I think that, I really want parents to, and, we're challenging dads, because I do believe this strongly, that more than anything, a father imparts identity. And I want dads, I mean, moms do too to some extent, but a father in particular, that because mothers are usually better at the relationship part, and they're better at helping our kids, learn how to, go through life. But fathers speak life into their kids if they do it well. And so, what you've talked about, though, is identity, which comes through connection. It comes through that time. Quantity begets quality, and then we help them. We tell them who they are, and through our connection with them, we help them to fulfill their purpose in life. And that's a great. That's really, thank you, James. That really imparts something to dads that we can get our hands around and say, as an example, I remember, and it changes the way you speak into your kids. I can remember one time when my oldest boy, Michael, was playing baseball. He was 12 years old, and he was struggling because he wasn't playing as much as he wanted. And so what the typical dad response would be, well, you're not working hard enough, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And because I had been being trained in this way, I said, Michael, did you know that you're on one of the best baseball teams in the Dallas-Fort Worth area? I mean, you're in the top 10% probably of any baseball player in the Metroplex, maybe in the world, okay, with your training. I said, do you want to get better? So again, speaking identity, here's who he is. That's true. He was. I mean, he was a really good baseball player. And I said, do you want to get better? And do you want to do the work it takes? He said, yes. I said, then I want to, if that's your vision, if you want to do it, I'd like to invite you into some things I think we can do in order to help you get there. Okay. Those are the kind of approaches to take instead of, well, let me tell you what to do here, son. And those are the things that you change in terms of identity, connection. Does he want it or not? And if he doesn't, let's find out what he does want. you know, those are good things. And so with that, you have you've got a new book series out, and tell them about how to, well, just start with, how do they connect with you, with Generation Youth, and also this new book series you have out?
The easiest way to find us is to go to our website, which is generation-youth.com.
And we'll put this
Generation-youth.com.
in the show notes too for everybody.
And there they'll find many of our resources that we have. But the new book series that we have is last year, about this time of the year, well, in the spring of 25, I had parents say, "Hey, I'm worried about my kid getting started at the beginning of the year. They're not, they're getting off to a wrong start. They come off of the summer and they're not focused as they go into the school. Can you help me?" And so I got really concentrated on how can I have them have a good start, a quick start. How can I ignite something in them that's going to last throughout the entire year? And so we settled upon writing 30-day journals. 30-day journals, which is our Ignite series journals. We have one for each grade, freshman through senior, and which is just a 30-day journal in which we tackle 4 different areas that they focus on. One, their mindset, because we got to get them thinking about, hey, you can do some great things. Hey, you got to be open to the possibility. We don't get them thinking about that first, and the rest of the stuff that we're going to talk about is going to be irrelevant. Then we talk about relationships, self-image, relationships, and goals in the next thing. Each grade level is a little bit different on its focus. It's a little bit different on the stories. There's no repeats at all. But there are 30-day journals, the Ignite journals. If they go, they can actually find it at ignite30days.com. It'll take it straight to that landing page, or they can go to our master website as well.
Great. And I want to tell people, so I was just jotting down the website so we can put it in the show notes. And then also I wanted to introduce to parents that, we've talked about how your kid gets identity. Well, one of the ways you do that is that kid spends time with the Father, with God the Father. Mm-hmm. And so what we do, and we tend to just really try to impose have you read your Bible today? And it becomes this, almost like a school lesson. Well, we just found some ways over the years, raising 7 kids, to help our kids learn how to want to spend time with Jesus and to really believe that. And so we're coming out with it. If you've been around Crazy Cool Family, you know that we have deep dives, and deep dives are just things. You can go to our website, go into the shop where and go hit the deep dives, and coming out with one about just teaching our kids the most important thing, how to spend time with Jesus. And really, you'll learn some things for yourself about spending time with Jesus, because when we teach our kids, sometimes we're the biggest learners, but also we're going to teach you on how to have discussions with your kids about spending time with Jesus, what it looks like at every age, and just some resources there. It's about a 17-page PDF. I think you're going to love it. So, and it's really cheap. The download's like $4. It's an easy $4 to spend, and you have it forever. And so go there, and just remember, we are really focusing on dads this month. And last thing I'll do is just challenge dads. If you go to our website, crazycoolfamily.com, we have a thing you sign up for called the Playbook. Playbook's a daily email you read in 2 minutes a day, but it also is a portal into everything Crazy Cool Family. So if you want to lead your family well, if you hear this podcast and you're like, I want to connect with my teenager, I want to lead my family well, we have a ton of resources. James has resources. We have resources that are going to help. You've got everything you need, and it just takes a little bit of time, daily, weekly. It's not like you got to read, 5 books in a month. I mean, literally, if you'll spend 10 minutes a day, you will get the material, some information you need, just like you have from this podcast, that are going to dramatically make a difference in how you connect with your kids and how they connect with God. And so go to the resources, go to our website, sign up for the Playbook. It's right there on the first page. Go to generation-youth.com and go to crazycoolfamily.com and get our guide to how to spend time with Jesus. So, James, thank you for being here.
I'm going to give you a commercial really quick, too, is that, it was 4 years ago that I started a class at my church that was based on the crazy cool content, where we were looking at your videos. That class is still together, has tripled in size since then, and it was one of the things that was most incredible about that, and I encourage people to go through, is we encouraged them to have their children, and my daughter did this, draw the diagram, create the diagram of everybody connecting through there. And we had those all over the room. And I wish I'd taken a picture and sent it to you and stuff, but I want to encourage your audience to engage in your stuff, because that really was life-changing for a lot of people as they begin to see things in a little bit different way.
Well, Ilhan, thank you. And, it really is. And the reason we call it crazy and what we're talking about is, the reason we always said Crazy Cool Family is because God's ways are crazy. They are different than the world. When you're different than the norm, when you're different than the world, you're crazy. Wow, that guy, he's crazy. Look at how, whoever it is and whatever they're doing, because if you do things the same as the world, then you're sane, supposedly. But when you do things a little crazy, then you are different, and that's what God's ways are. That's why we call it Crazy Cool Family. And so you're going to find that if you parent a little differently, like we're talking about, a little bit more faith-filled, a little bit more relationship building, a little bit more identity building, you're going to see great benefit. And I think it's back, like James said, it's backed up by research. The young people are crying out for it.
Yes.
It's not that we're saying it. I mean, God says it. Yes, it's true. But your young people are crying out to you to say, inspire me, Dad. They're crying out to you to say, connect with me, Dad. They're crying out to you to say, give me identity and purpose, Dad. And we get to do that. So, James, thanks for being on. Appreciate your time. And, that's why we always tell parents, go be crazy. crazycoolfamily.com.